Okay, hello. Let me see if this is working. I'm live on YouTube. I'm going to turn my sound off here. Live on Instagram. I'm excited to be hopping on today. I haven't gone live in a while. It's actually been a lot of pre-recorded things. We're a little bit earlier than scheduled / late on my schedule because Lila was needing a bottle and is eating right now. It's been a while since I've been able to go live here on Instagram, and a while since I've been able to go live here on YouTube. So today's topic in true Thrive Over Survive fashion, if you are familiar with Thrive Over Survive, there's Luna in the background. If you're familiar with our series Thrive Over Survive, it's all about raising awareness for domestic violence for those who are recovering and trying to get their life back on track. And they don't just want to survive the day-to-day, they want to thrive in their day-to-day. I was talking with my coach and mentor, Judy, and she commented on something. And she was like, I'm a thriver, and I loved that motto. So I want everyone in this community, anyone watching the shows, anyone watching the series, to feel like they're thrivers and they're making progress. So if you haven't been keeping up with the series, you can find it over on YouTube. If you're on YouTube now watching this, there are episodes that we've recorded, some solo from my own experiences and my own stories, and some that I've recorded with guests who actually provide great tips and great resources through their own businesses and through their own experiences going through trauma and going through and healing from abuse. You're okay, Lil. So today we're going to be talking about, since September is pretty much over at this point, if you're wondering what happened to my voice, that was from my wedding over the weekend. My voice is gone and shot, as along with the cold weather that's coming in our area. But since September is basically over, October 1st is this Saturday, and that kicks off the domestic violence awareness. And it actually is the last episode that I'll be releasing of Thrive Over Survive for a little bit here, because I have the behind the scenes in business series starting next week, which was poor planning on my part, but here we are. You're okay. It just happened to be when the recordings fell and how they lined up. If you are watching this, then maybe you're someone who is suffering, or you know someone who is suffering from domestic violence. So if you're not familiar with my story, I experienced domestic violence from 2017 to 2018. I finally left my abuser once things got to a point of being physical abuse. It happened a couple of times, and then to the point where I knew if I continued to let it happen, I maybe wouldn't be alive and wouldn't be there for my daughter. And if you're in this situation, you know how hard those choices are, because you really are just living day to day of, how do I survive? How do I make it through the day? And you're in pure survival mode. Your brain, it's hard to think. Your brain is going all over the place. You're emotionally amped up. You're probably being gaslighted. You're probably being manipulated, and you're just not really sure what to do. Or sometimes you're not even sure if you're being abused, because it's so subtle, or they're doing such a good job of gaslighting you, and they are really good at making it seem, they being the abusers, making it seem like you're going crazy or you're nuts. I was in therapy for a few months before the split, not for the violence and not for the abuse, but for postpartum depression, which I realized shortly after everything came to light, because even my therapist didn't know, and I had been hiding it from her. I've been hiding it from family members. I was suffering in silence for a while. Once it came to light and once I did choose to leave and I did share my story, it made me feel empowered. And that's why I continue to share my story today on podcasts, on stage. I just shared the story in the book chapter I just wrote for Business on Purpose because it really led me to start ELF operations, and it helped me heal. ELF operations helped me heal from everything that was going on. But I suffered in silence for a really long time, thinking it was postpartum depression, but that was just kind of what I was led to believe from my abuser. They were blaming that. And then through working things out in therapy, realizing that I probably didn't have postpartum depression, I was actually just being gaslit into thinking that, and that I was actually truly depressed and just trying to handle everything going on in my life because there was just chaos after chaos when I was suffering the abuse. And they used that, and they used my weaknesses, and they used my fear, and they used my self-doubt and self-image, well, lack of a self-image, to be able to manipulate me and take advantage of it. So that's kind of a little bit of my background and my story of, that's what led up to it. That's what led into it. I suffered physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and financial abuse. I still have to deal with my abuser to this day. We have to co-parent, and it's extremely, extremely difficult to deal with that. I'm not ready to share much on that piece. I'm just here to share a lot about, what to do when you're ready to leave and to raise awareness about it, because that's why I share my story, is to inspire other men or women, if you're experiencing any type of abuse, to leave the relationship you're in, because love doesn't hurt. It's not supposed to hurt. And you should feel good and be loved and treated and respected and cared for in the best way possible. And I share my story for that reason, to inspire others, because when I was unsure and I was scared and I didn't know how I was going to make it day to day, I listened to podcasts, I listened to videos like this, and it really helped inspire me. So that's why I'm using my platforms to raise awareness for domestic violence, because 1 in 4 women experience this at some point in their life. And if you are, and it's actually just not talked about enough. It is now, thanks to social media and people being brave enough to share their stories. And to be able to share their stories, you have to feel safe. I'm very lucky that I was able to get out safely, minor injury included. But that injury is really what set me up for, I say this all the time, and it's terrible to say, but because of having a broken nose and because of the injuries that I had, it was able to put my abuser in, hold them accountable, and they were charged for assault, and they were charged with all these things. And it's hard when you're just experiencing emotional and mental abuse, because those things are harder to prove within the court system and get some of these things in place that help me leave my situation, like getting a PFA, which is a protection from abuse order. They are, in some counties and in some areas, extremely hard to get unless there's noticeable physical wounds, which is really unfortunate. There's a lot of things that are wrong with our system. I will be the first to say that, because I've experienced it on so many levels. But you need to know how to navigate and respect the system, because that is your best bet, is to use the system to the best of your advantage. So getting to know your system, getting to know the system in your area, like, who are my contacts? Do I have a night court? Do I have an emergency place? Know your police officers. And where we were living, my ex had called the police on me so many times that they thought I was the problem. So he had been setting it up and manipulating me from the beginning, setting the stage so that, whenever I called the police later on, after he would do these horrible things, and if I did have the courage to call the police, they had already been called on me so many times. So we, they kind of like knew our house because we lived in a small little area at the time in that borough. So, you want to know who you can contact other than the police because they are a resource, but they will only get involved when it's drastic. Um, Knowing who your support people are, knowing what paperwork you might need to file in your area or your jurisdiction. So, in my area, I had to go to night court because our event happened on the weekend. So we had night court and it was an emergency PFA put into place until we could get in front of a hearing officer and judge for an actual PFA. Sorry, Lila was fussy here. And so getting that PFA or restraining order in place as soon as possible so that you can feel safe. I went to our local women's shelter. Pittsburgh has a phenomenal women's shelter and service center. They have crisis hotlines. They had a phone line that I could call at any time, and I would call them when I felt unsafe or if my abuser was in jail, because they have an awesome program that lets you know, like, if and when they get out of jail, because if they're getting out of jail, they might be angry and that anger might be targeted at you, which is something I've worried and dealt with a lot because my abuser broke his PFA multiple times. I think he was arrested 4 or 5 times on just breaking the PFA alone. And it is incredibly, incredibly nerve-wracking, anxiety-ridden. Your nervous system's just on high alert at all times when this is happening. But there are some amazing resources and women's shelters in place, especially if you're in the Pittsburgh area. I've listed a few in my YouTube description. So if you're watching on Instagram, make sure to go over to YouTube. The links are in there. The hotline for domestic hotline for domestic violence is also in that description if you need it. It's 800-799-7233, and they can support you on a national level. If you're local to Pittsburgh, like I said, call the women's shelter, call that number. They have some amazing resources, and document everything. That's like one of the biggest things, because I documented things that had happened previous to the breaking point of anytime I'd been physically hit. I took pictures of it and I documented text messages that I thought could potentially later be used to my advantage if he were to ever turn on me. And thank God I did, because it made my case stronger when we went to court. So that's a little bit of like my tips and tricks that I've learned, not tips and tricks, but like things I've learned along my journey to help me. And we're still going through our journey. It's going to be going on for a while. But it's the best thing I can do for my daughter at this point. And, those are some of the best resources that I've found that have helped. And going to specific therapists and lawyers who are, who know about and are understanding of narcissistic abuse or abuse in general, because it is very different from a normal, straightforward like divorce or separation, custody. They need to know what they're dealing with, and it's best to have resources and people in your corner who understand the complexity of the issue, understand the complexity of your partner, and the kinds of manipulation and games they're going to try to play on you. So those are some of the resources. If you're struggling, if you're someone who's watching and someone who might be silently suffering, there are ways that you can help them by listening, being supportive and non-judgmental, helping them document things. Like if you notice something's going on, or you notice bruises or excuses or flusteredness, document those for them. I have an ongoing Word doc that I share with my lawyer that is all about like our co-parenting timeline. If there's a nasty message on our Family Wizard, which is another great resource if you have to co-parent with someone like this, is our Family Wizard is an app that tracks everything. It has calendar, expenses, messages, and your lawyer can have access to this. But you need to do a lot of the heavy lifting for them. So you're not paying it, and no one cares about your case more than you do. So make sure you're being so detail oriented. because so many people just suffer in silence and there's so many people dealing with this. It's just not, sometimes it's hard for people to talk about it. I know it took me a long time to feel comfortable to talk about it, and it wouldn't have been for having the safety or the feeling of safety with my now husband, um, who helped me really get through this, and the safety I felt from my family and so many people in my corner that were able to help me, and have my back. So if you're struggling with something like this, my DMs are always open. I do have to hop off onto another meeting and another call. But if you are looking for resources or wanting to help someone that you need, please feel free to reach out to me. And I hope that, this video could be shared with someone. If you know someone, share it with them, share the resources that are in the YouTube description, and just help raise some awareness by giving back, donating items, giving some money if you can. There's a lot of ways to help and give back to the shelters and those who are suffering. I know Elf Operations has a lot. My company is working on a lot of different ways to give back to these women and help these women. So be on the lookout for those. And I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.